Our next panel focuses on what makes a smart city, from job growth to cleaning sidewalks and to the air we breathe. Welcome on the stage the moderator of this session, Sruthi Gottipati, Editor-in-Chief of Brut India, and our panelists, we can applaud them, Clover, Lord Mayor of Sydney, Rahm Emanuel, Mayor of Chicago, Catherine Guillouard, Chairwoman and President RATP Group, and Bertrand Camus, Group SEVP Africa, Middle East, Asia, and Pacific at Suez. Thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm Sruthi Gottipati, Editor-in-Chief of Brut India, and this is the panel on what makes a smart city. We have Clover, Lord Mayor of Sydney. We have Rahm Emanuel, Mayor of Chicago. We have Catherine Guillouard, Chairwoman and President of the RATP Group. And we have Bertrand Camus, who is the Senior Executive Vice President, Africa, Middle East, India, Asia Pacific at Suez. I'm very excited to be here, and I can't wait to hear what they have to say. So let's jump right in. Mayor Moore, what is Sydney doing to foster a green economy, and how are you ensuring that all citizens benefit from it?
Well, we did a comprehensive consultation back in 2007, and the majority of people, 97% of people, in fact, told us they wanted us to address global warming, and that's way back. And so we set our targets in 2008 and made our commitment to reduce our emissions by 70% by 2030, and in order to achieve that, we developed a suite of plans that related to energy efficiency and renewable energy and greening our city and reducing waste and conserving and reusing our water. So then we set targets, and we also included monitoring to keep us on track. And we've got a strong track record. We were carbon neutral in 2007, and even though our economy at the city has dramatically increased in the last decade, and our population has increased, the economy has increased by 37%, and if it had been business as usual, we would have had 50% emissions. But instead, we reduced our emissions by 25% in our own operations and 20% in right across the city. And we think that that was... So I think what that showed was that we were able to take that strong action, but at the same time have a strong economy. We also include other initiatives like collecting data to target environmental programs. We improved sustainability for office tenants. We did energy tune-ups for business, residential apartments, and programs to encourage the uptake of renewable energy. And we work right across the city. We work with business so that the owners of over 50% of commercial properties in our central business district agreed to commit to our goals of 70% reduction in emissions, and they have already reduced their emissions by 52%, and they're saving themselves 33 million a year. We work with our residents on a green apartments program, and they're very pleased with the fact that costs are coming down, and they're getting lower energy and water consumption and better waste management. I think the other thing we've done is we have a comprehensive program to tackle residential waste. We are trialling a service that allows our residents in apartments to have their food converted into high-grade compost or energy. And we have a communal waste bin for clothing and textiles in apartment buildings, weekly curbside collection for electronic waste, and community drop-off centre for problem waste and chemicals. And given we're the driest continent, water conservation is really important for us, so we have quite progressive and advanced programs for recycling and water harvesting, to keep our city green and to contribute to our major parkland in Sydney Park, and also our major urban renewal area. So I think they're the key things. Oh, the other thing we're doing is we have invested in tailored green deposit scheme, which will provide us with, we're working with one of Australia's major banks, and funds will only be invested in projects that are certified by the internationally recognised Climate Bonds Initiative, such as renewable energy, low carbon transport, low carbon buildings. So that's another thing we're doing.
Okay, terrific. Mayor Emanuel, Chicago is committed to using 100% renewable energy in all municipal buildings by 2025, buildings citywide by 2035, and fully electrified bus fleet by 2040. How is the city delivering on this, and why is it key to a thriving city?
Yeah, well, first of all, you have to go a little back. So what we've launched is what I call Retrofit Chicago. It's what I call the sixth energy source. We now have 90 buildings across the city of Chicago, 55 million square feet, all under retrofit. Every one of the buildings on average have seen about 20% reduction in energy use. When you think of oil, gas, nuclear, renewable, and coal, retrofit is what I call the sixth energy source. In a lot of it actually creates jobs and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. Over the last 6 years, we've seen 10% reduction in our greenhouse gas emission, although Chicago's employment today is the highest it's ever been in the history of the city, proving that both jobs and economic growth can go together, and environmental policy. Second, in my second year there as mayor, we were the last city in the United States that had 2 coal plants that were operating in the city in poor communities, and we shut them down. Then the third thing we did is we're on the process of, as you noted, setting not only goals, but every street light, we're in our second of a 4-year, will go all LED. Our buses will go totally electric by 2040. And we have purchased, can you hear me? The first 20 of those total redo of the buses. And I think that whole process, and there's other things that we have done in a sense of renewable energies. We're now starting to purchase as a city, a lot of solar and wind power that is going to power the public buildings. But we've created a partnership, like on the retrofit, that has made the city of Chicago a leader in basically the conversion. Now, what that has also led to is we make fully public to all commercial and residential renters your energy use and energy cost on all buildings, making the market come alongside the policy goals of the city of Chicago and using market forces to drive a change in behavior. Because once now you're a law office, an advertising firm, or a family, you move into a building, you can find the cost of energy and the kind of content of the energy, and you get that immediately knowledgeable from any building 50,000 square feet or above. And that drives the changes in the behavior by the developers and the landlords. Those are the major ways we've done it.
Great. Infrastructure, transportation,
Yeah.
education are at the top of every mayor's agenda around the world. How can mayors use areas like these to fight climate change?
Well, first of all, I'll give you 2 examples. One is we've gone from, when I became mayor, we were considered the 10th city in the United States that was bike-friendly. Then we emerged over 5 years as the #1 city. We've added 200 some odd miles of protected bike lanes in the city of Chicago. And some we have on the commercial street, it's Milwaukee Avenue. It's the most used street in America for people that go to and from work by bike in the United States. And that's an alternative. Now, I take the train 3 times a week to work. And I have made a commitment to do a series of things. And so we're basically on path. We're about 40%. We have a little public transportation. Chicago has the 2nd largest system in the United States. More people take our public transportation in 1 month than take all of Amtrak nationwide all year. So it's quite a significant system. We have basically committed that half the track will be totally new over the next 8 years, and we've already on our way to that. Stations and every rail car by 2019 will be totally fit. Now, one of the things we also did just 2 years ago We were talking about this backstage. We were the first city to put a fee on Uber and Lyft that goes into a fund in the mass transit system to modernize the system. Because I want mass transit to be a competitor with Uber and Lyft. And it directly funds, and the truth of the matter is, it's, in my view, quite a progressive tax. The second thing is, as you said, on education, is making people that are smarter, more aware of their environment and as consumers, like what we've done on making sure the information is available to people that are renting or moving into a building with a commercial use, and the power source and what the cost is. And if you can do that, you can educate people to be good, not only good consumers, but good stewards of the environment as a whole.
Thank you. RATP Group positions itself as a key partner for smart cities. What is for you the priority for cities to thrive?
I think that we need to share, for instance, some figures around it, because in 2050 there will be 10 billion of people, and it's plus 30% versus today. And 60% of the consumption will be in cities, 70% of the gas emission effect will be in cities. So as public transportation, we need absolutely to contribute to have a more sustainable, more connected, obviously, and also more inclusive, because I don't like the term smart city because it seems like automation, you understand what I mean, will erase, delete the social, which is absolutely not the case anywhere. So we are today an international group. A lot of people think of our RATP group in Paris because we have all the transport system, which obviously is a big one, integrating 2 light trails, 14 metro lines, 7 tramway lines, 4,700 buses. But the reality is that we are present in 4 continents and 14 cities, and the 14 countries. And the reality is that today we want to move towards better city. And for doing so, what we are trying to help the authorities to think about the design of transportation, what we could do, because we are multi-expert. We are running transportation system, but we are building metro lines, and we are building blocks of smart cities. Just to give you a few examples, yesterday I was on site in Paris, in the 5th neighborhood of Paris. We have a project where we will renew totally our maintenance depot for a metro line, the line 12 in Paris. We will put underneath 400 units in which 50% will be social units of housing and a nursery. So it's a block with eco-conception by design, fully highly quality environmental set, and this will be a block of inclusive and smart cities inside the city. So we have the ability to run this type of project, and obviously for us it's absolutely key. We are the 5th public transport operator in the world, and what we could do is aggregating our knowledge in terms of transport, in terms of running this type of project, in order to help the mayors to think about that city differently, and also integrated innovative transportation. Notably, we are multimodal and intermodal, which is much more complicated because, for instance, we are running presently 12 modes of transport, different, 8 ourselves, like RER, metro, tram, cable, electric sightseeing. I think you tested yesterday. But we have also a fund called RATP Capital Innovation, in which we invest in startup and we develop additional modes like electric scooter, car sharing, carpooling. For instance, what we are doing in Paris is that. And we really think that tomorrow mobility will be seen as a service where you will integrate multi-mode of transport. And finally, if I could say so, the ultimate goal is to give back time to the people for their private life or for job life. And I'm very much with you on that, because I think when we have the ability to give a clear, sustainable path in order to go to see friends or to go to job and redeem to the people time, it's very important. That's it. I think it's a very, very interesting path for us. All the group is behind us. I just want to mention that on the 61,000 people working for the group, already 17,000 are working everywhere. For instance, we have the cable car in Boston. We are in Washington. We are the second employer in Algeria. We are running the metro of Doha, Riyadh, the tramway of Hong Kong. So we are everywhere, and we want really to develop that. Inclusive, connected, sustainable cities.
Thank you. What are the citizens' expectations from their cities?
This is the field in which we see the most evolutions over the past years. And I would say that when we look at the challenges around the climate change, there are, of course, technical solutions, issues around infrastructure that companies, corporations, and leaders can develop. But there is a major issue which is around change of behavior and the necessity for the populations and the citizens to be actors of that change. And I was thinking about an image to illustrate that, and I was thinking about Paris, because we always have to project ourselves in a world where situations are very different from one continent to the other, one city to the other. And if you look at the city of Paris 2,000 years ago, it was the island in the middle of the Seine River, where the Seine River was at the same time the source of water for the population and also the protection against invasions and any kind of robbery. Along the development of the city, the Seine River became a slum, a dump, where all the sewage was going on. And at that time, 150 years ago, when a group like ours was created, infrastructure had to be developed to make a better and safer place to live in Paris. And infrastructure is key. Mayor Emanuel was mentioning that when he arrived in Chicago, he started by fixing all the leaks in the water network, because if you don't have the correct infrastructure, you cannot deliver the service. And now, when we project ourselves, if we look to the adaptation towards the impact of climate change, it's not only adapting the infrastructure, the services, but it's also asking the population to adapt themselves to this new situation. And today, for example, Paris has been investing, and the region has been investing a lot in sewage treatment plants. So we have fishes back in the river. I think there was one species still alive 40 years ago. Now there are more than 35. And we are now even speaking about swimming in the Seine River for the Olympic Games. I take this example because it illustrates very well the combination of technology, solutions, and the way ourselves as citizens we need to adapt and to be actors of that change.
Do you think women are sufficiently involved in the transformation of cities?
I think that's a very important question, because cities and a lot of things in the world have been designed by and for man. That's that. I always remember when I was in the US, we took over a water system in New Jersey, and half of our crew, our employees, were women, and the first day we discovered that there was only one bathroom in the buildings, because it was conceived only for men. So that being said, women have ready to take a leadership, and we have to work on the development of leadership. I think this was mentioned this morning in the introductory speeches. Women are the first victims of the consequences of climate change. We are working ourselves a lot in developing countries, and we see the consequences of not having services of good quality on women's life and their ability to develop and do other things than just taking care of those issues. And I think that corporations have a major responsibility in fostering and developing the leadership And this is what we do at Suez, and we have, I would say, very strong programs, and it's a true commitment of the group to work on that.
Bertrand meant to say yes. Yes would have worked to that question.
Mayor Moore, in your time as mayor, how have you seen the city change, and what are the biggest areas for growth?
Well, I became mayor in 2004. It was after a 3-week unplanned campaign, and I came in on a platform of a city of villages, greening the city, and a long-term strategic plan. So we set about greening our city, and the city at the time was very congested. It had ageing infrastructure, and it needed a lot of work. So we set about talking to our communities and did some action plans straight away, did about 900 projects in our various villages. Then we did our long-term consultation to develop our long-term plan for the city. That was endorsed in 2008. It's guided all our work since then, and since then it's enabled us to pursue our goal of 70% reduction in emissions by 70%. It's ensured that the city is powering. We have completed over 250 projects. They've included parks and playgrounds, childcare, pools, libraries, theatres, community and cultural spaces. We've won 145 national and international awards for design and sustainability, and we're now working on 430 projects as part of our 10-year plan. During this time, we've approved $25 billion worth of private sector development, which has all gone through a design excellence process, and we have significant urban renewal underway, and that's also undergoing design excellence and sustainability. And since 2004, our economy has grown by 10%, and it has grown by 2/3. It now contributes more than 10% to the national economy. It's now overtaken the mining industry in being important to Australia's economy, and we've been a leader in environmental action. We have we have and are continuing to create a cycling network, establishing car share. Our open space has increased by 23 hectares. We've planted thousands of trees and plants and rain gardens, and we've created or renewed 81 parks and 48 playgrounds. We have one of Australia's largest urban renewal schemes. That's continuing apace, and we're spending $540 million on community facilities and open space there. We support the cultural life of the city. We contribute each year $35 million to that, and we've given about $100 million in grants over the last decade. I'm also proud to say that the city is now a city for people. It's inclusive, it's diverse. We invest in affordable housing. We were the first council in Australia to have a homelessness program, and we have created thousands of childcare spaces. Our city is one of the fastest growing residential areas in the country, and we've also become the epicentre of jobs growth for the metropolitan area. I think our strength has been that we make commitments, we take action, and people see the results. And I'm pleased to say that my independent team was re-elected for a 4th term with a 10% swing just recently, and now we're working on our program for 2050.
Thank you. I think we have time for one last question. A common talking point from politicians and businesses is that environmental regulations will kill jobs. How do you respond to critics who say stronger environmental protections will stifle economic growth?
Well, I think that first of all, part of all our issues is how do you get the type of change you want to see that doesn't threaten people? And one of the things, like we have this major infrastructure project on replacing 900 miles of water project. And the way we passed it 50-0, but the way I sold it was, we're going to make sure when we do the work, 25% of all the work goes to minority and women-owned businesses. And that made it an inclusive economic project, not an exclusive economic project. So part of one of the things that I'm hoping on the conference we all do is how do you learn how to make these changes where they become friend, not foe, and not people scared. because I used to say to President Obama, people hate the status quo, and they're not too excited by change either. So they kind of got you right where you want. So how do you move things that people want to embrace that change rather than be scared by it? Now, on the basic point on jobs and economic growth, part of what you have to do, starting in my view, is showing people very specific projects that produce jobs that allow you to take alternative energy, or like in the retrofit area where we did things like this. Today, Chicago has an unprecedented economic boom. In the last 2 years, we hit 2 record highs of construction and in the cranes. Yet our energy use by our buildings has dropped 20%. And so when that's now for new buildings, for the old buildings, we've done it on a retrofit and made it part of our job training program. So we brought people in who are on the outside of the economy into the inside of the economy and be part of that growth. And if you do that, look, our whole goal here is how to make climate change, good environmental policy, a winner economically rather than a liability. And you have to think about things, not just women, I would also argue minority communities, bring them into the winner's circle of the economic growth. And that's whether it's in the educational area, in the job training area, and if you can do that and produce more winners in the change, you're going to get the political system to bend towards that change rather than resist it. And that is the goal that all of us who are in leadership, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector, are trying to explain to the public, and you have to figure out how to bring more people that are on the periphery, both women and minorities, into the mainstream where this change and the opportunities doesn't exclude them, but includes their communities. And if you do that, you'll have more people pushing change rather than resisting it.
Thank you for
That's
that.
my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're glad to have you on board today. All right, thank you.